Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the Ramakrishna Kathamrita, all over again. So these great spiritual classics, we should never say that we have read them. We should always say that we are reading them. That we were told this by our senior monks. Like, don't say, I've read the Gita. I am reading it. So at the beginning of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, there's an invocation, which I chant. You would have noticed, Tava Kathamritam. So what does that mean? I saw that Swami Chaitanya in his introductory essay, he has given a nice explanation. So I'll read out parts of the explanation. This is the invocatory chant, the Mangalacharana. You know that it's a tradition, when you study Vedanta, or any Indian scripture for that matter, before starting the text, there is a invocatory verse. Often it is a salutation to God, or a prayer for the fulfillment of the purpose of the study, or salutation to the Guru, or something like that. So here, this Sanskrit verse which I chant is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th skanda, the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which deals with the life of Sri Krishna. So the verse goes, Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhir iritam kalmashapaham shravana mangalam Srimad atatam bhuvi grinanti ye bhurida janaha. This is from the Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, 31st chapter, 9th verse. What does it mean? O Lord, Krishna is being addressed here. O Lord, your nectar-like words relieve the burning misery of afflicted souls. Your words, which poets have sung in verses, destroy the sins of worldly people forever. Blessed are they who hear of your vast glory. Blessed indeed are those who speak of you. How unparalleled is their bounty. So this is taken from the Gopi Gita. So the Bhagavatam, it's a short portion of the 10th skanda of the Bhagavatam, but it's very beautiful. It's very sublime. The story there is that Sri Krishna had promised to meet the gopis, the milkmaids of Vrindavan, on a full moon night in autumn. So the gopis came to meet him on the bank of the river Yamuna that night, and he played with them. But he sensed that they had become proud and conceited because of this privilege of being invited to play with Krishna. So he suddenly disappeared from them. Grief-stricken, the gopis wept and prayed for him to return. So that prayer of the gopis is called the Gopi Gita, the song of the gopis. And this verse is one of those verses, the 9th verse in that Gopi Gita. So what does it mean? First, Tava Kathamritam. Tava means your. One second. Tava means yours. And Kathamritam, Katha means words. Amrita means nectar. Your nectar-like words. So basically, the idea is that the author or the compiler, M, is calling the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna the nectar-like words, the nectar-like words of God. Your words, O Lord, are like nectar. We sometimes, so this is Swami Chaitanya explaining it. We sometimes say, oh, your words are so sweet. But having no nectar ourselves, we do not know how to speak nectar-like words. The divine incarnations have this nectar within, and so their words are full of sweetness. This is something that I have noticed myself also. Senior monks, even just talking with them, just ordinary, the few words exchanged with them, gives a lot of peace to the mind. There is some there's sweetness, but there's a kind of very pure and elevating kind of sweetness. You feel cleansed, you feel calmed, you feel strengthened and inspired. So that is nectar. Amrita means nectar and also immortality. According to Hindu mythology, the gods and the demons churned the ocean in order to obtain the nectar of immortality. After a hard struggle, they extracted a jar of the nectar. But the gods, they took all the nectar and they drank it all, and they drank it, becoming immortal. Of course, that nectar is the immortality obtained in heaven is relative. It's not forever. It's only when you become enlightened, free of samsara, that you attain true immortality. So the nectar is actually within all of us. And that is what you find in these words, that is which is manifested in these words. God is the ocean of nectar. There is this story. Once Sri Ramakrishna asked Swami Vivekananda, suppose there were a cup of syrup and you were a fly, where would you sit to drink the syrup? Vivekananda replied, I would sit on the edge of the cup and stretch out my neck to drink it. Why? Ramakrishna asked. What's the harm in plunging into the middle of the cup and drinking the syrup? Vivekananda answered, but then I should stick in the syrup and die. My child, Ramakrishna said to him, that isn't the nature of the nectar of Satchidananda. It is the nectar of immortality. Man does not die from diving into it. On the contrary, he becomes immortal. And then the next words are tapta jivanam. It means the afflictions of life in samsara, sufferings of life in samsara. So your words, your nectar-like words, they relieve the sufferings of samsara. Your words relieve the burning misery of worldly life. The world is burning with misery. When we talk about life, we heave a deep sigh. I remember, this is Swami Chaitananji. So he is saying that when I was a young student of Vedanta, I heard a vivid description of samsara from one of his teachers. Well, our teacher was expounding the concept of Maya. He said, do you know what this world is? A traveler was passing through a desert. The sun was scorching hot. He was dead tired, thirsty, hungry, and exhausted. He was trying to find shelter, a shady place where he could take a little rest. At last, he found a place where he lay down his head and slept, not knowing that the spot was made shady by the shadow of a poisonous cobra's hood. A single drop of poison from that cobra would finish his life. So that is this world. We do not know how the mysterious Maya traps and binds and enslaves us. We are tormented by desire and doubt and disease and death and passion, jealousy, hatred, anger, so many other things. The word of the Lord alone rescues us from this awful situation. It soothes our nerves, brings us peace and joy. Just as water extinguishes fire, the words of the Lord extinguish the burning misery caused by worldly desires. Krishna said in the Gita to Arjuna, having come into this transitory, joyless world, worship me. Prapya imam asukam lokam bhajasva mam. Worship the Lord. Jesus said, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So the words of Kathamrita act like mantras for forgetting the suffering of the world. The next words are Kavibhir Iditam. Kavi means poet. Poets have praised the words or sung the words of the Lord in many ways. A renaissance begins with the advent of each avatar. Many books and dramas are written, songs and music are composed, and artworks and sculptures are created. Ramakrishna spoke but a few words, and Swami Vivekananda expounded that message of harmony of religions, the divinity of human beings, spreading it throughout the world. M recorded the Master's immortal gospel, while the actor-dramatist Girish Chandra Ghosh wrote several dramas that incorporated the ideas of Ramakrishna. Many poets have composed songs, and that's still going on, based on the teachings of the Master. Sri Ramakrishna himself had no formal education. His knowledge came straight from God. One day he said, if you want to understand in one sentence, come to me. If you want to understand the same thing in 1,000 words, go to Keshav. So Keshav Chandra Sen was the Brahma Samaj leader, was a famous orator and teacher in those days. Then the next word is Kalmashapaham. Kalmasha means impurity, impurity of the mind. Kalmashapaham means that which destroys the impurities, which purifies the mind basically by destroying the impurities of the mind. The words of God destroys all kinds of sins and their results. So that which has the basic obstacle to God realization is the impurities of our mind. That is what is really binding us down. I was, I've sometimes mentioned this sannyasini, this nun I had seen in the mountains, Shubhadra Mataji. That she's like Gopal Irma. She is a worshipper of the child Gopala, the child Krishna. And I had seen her about 16 years ago. And she used to live in this little cottage high up in the Himalayas at 9,000 feet. And she had spent 8 or 9 years in Tapovan, which is higher than Gangotri itself. It's around 15,000 feet. It's an icy wasteland. And she used to live there she lived continuously there for 8 or 9 years. And always praying, meditating, calling on Krishna. Very tough lady. Anyway, why I'm bringing her up is that she died, she passed 2 or 3 days ago. So I just saw a little video online. She was brought to our hospital in Haridwar, Kankal, in the Ramakrishna Mission Shevashram, and she passed away there. Now, why I'm saying this is that the intense desire for God realization. So the last few words that had been recorded of her, some people asked her how she came to those icy wastes. And she's from the south of India, from Karnataka. From there, she traveled all the way to the mountains and the highest parts of regions of that, most hostile regions. And one thing which became very clear from when she was talking about her life there, she knew nothing. She didn't even know that she'd be oxygen deprived at that altitude. She said that I learned it only by fainting several times a day. She didn't know where her food would come from. Somebody asked her, did you have medicines? And she was saying that, see, if you're tormented by these things, if I fall ill, what will happen to me? Where is my next meal going to come to me? I had one stove. And if you feel, if it doesn't work, what's going to happen to me? Because the next human being will come after 6 months. So the next 6 months, I'll be alone in this icy cave. If you feel like that, then you cannot survive there, she was saying. Now, it's not that she was an expert mountaineer and had taken all kinds of survival courses, and then she just dependent on God. And she had only one thing in mind, to find God. Leave the world behind and find God. So that intense desire, where does that come? Why doesn't that come to everybody? That comes because of a certain purity of mind. That purity of mind, it comes, so how, if we don't have that, then what do? Do you not walk the spiritual path? You do. You do these things, spiritual practices. One of them is listening to the words of incarnations of God, the teachings of enlightened persons, especially of the incarnations of God. So kalmashapaham, it purifies the mind. Then genuine desire, the intensity, which enables you to overcome every problem. Otherwise, what happens is every little problem becomes a mountainous problem. Then it's better not to go to an icy cave in the mountains. If you don't care about the world at all. I don't want to speak too much about it and then end up having people inspired and over enthusiastic and rushing off, dusting out their passports and rushing off to the high Himalayas. Don't do that. The main thing is not to stay in a mountain. I remember I met a monk there. I asked him about Tapovan, where this nun had stayed. So I was under the impression the higher you go, the more spiritual you become, altitude-wise. And so in Gangotri, which is pretty high enough, 10,000 feet, one monk told me, who had lived in Tapovan, he said, don't go there. It's a struggle just to survive. Forget thinking about God. So who can think about God day and night in that kind of an atmosphere, in that kind of a situation? Somebody whose mind is so pure that it doesn't want anything except God. So then the purification of the mind. God's name purifies our bodies and minds. Try to visualize the world as a room freshly painted with black paint. This is an example given by Sri Ramakrishna. You are there, dressed in white clothes. You may be extremely cautious, but you cannot be alert all the time. In one moment of forgetfulness, you will spoil your clothes. So it happens in the world. Desire, doubt, pride, anger, jealousy, greed, lust are continually polluting our minds. We stumble and fall. We make mistakes. We are overcome by temptations, by fear. But we must fight. Life is a struggle. Only two groups of people do not have to struggle: the illumined and the dead. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna helps us to develop a strong discriminative faculty, viveka, and protects us from weakness and temptation. Then the next words are Shravana Mangalam. Shravana means hearing. Mangalam means auspicious. Anybody who hears the words of God will undoubtedly be benefited. If one eats a hot chili, knowingly or unknowingly, one's tongue will burn. It can't be helped. Similarly, these words of the Lord definitely do people good. One may think that just hearing the gospel will not give much benefit, but it will. I remember reading that Swami Akhandanandaji, who established the ashram in Shargachi in Baharampur in Bengal. So he had it written in big letters on the top of the ashram, Jai Sri Ramakrishna, and you could see it from a distance from the road. Somebody asked him, why did you do that? He said, just by looking at the name of Sri Ramakrishna, if it registers in the mind, it is Mangala, Shravana Mangala. Just to hear the name, to see the name, that itself is auspicious. Shrimad. So Shrimad, Shri means beauty, prosperity, auspiciousness. So Shrimad is beautiful. The words of the Lord are beautiful. They're truly enchanting and delightful. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna draws us irresistibly to God. Swami Madhavanandaji, who was the president of the order, so he used to continuously read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. He was a great scholar. He's the one who translated the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad with Shankara Bhashya, the one which we use in the Ramakrishna order. It was translated by him. And he translated the Vivek Chudamani. He translated tough texts of Nyaya, Navya Nyaya, Bhasha Parichhed and all. So he was a master of Nyaya, he was a master of Vedanta, and of course Sanskrit and English and all of that. And he used to read the Gospel. So when he was the president of the order, one day he was sitting and reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So a young monk was puzzled and asked him, you still read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna? Meaning thereby, this is like for beginners. You know, if you are so senior and advanced, probably he thought maybe he should be spending his time reading the Upanishads or something like that, or the Ashtavakra or something. So are you still read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna? And Madhavanji looked surprised. He was a man of very few words. He looked surprised and he said, what do you mean still? I'm only now beginning to understand it. Only now. This is the president of the Ramakrishna order. He says, only I'm now beginning. Of course, for him, I'm sure what he means is he's beginning to realize those things. Those realizations are coming to him probably in that sense. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna draws us irresistibly to God. And I've told you that story also about the complete works and the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The young man who came to join the order to become a monk, and Swami Madhavanandaji, asked him, what have you read? You want to become a monk, what have you read? And the young man said, I've read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And Swami Madhavanandaji said, oh, you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and you want to become a monk? That's not possible, go away. Other senior monks who were watching this, one of them, they were puzzled. One of them asked, but he has read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Why can't he become a monk? And Swami Madhavanji said, he wants to become a monk. To become a monk, you must read the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. And so the monk said, oh, I see. And then what happens if you read the Gospel? And so Madhavanji again looked surprised. Oh, the Gospel. Oh, that's for God realization. You'll realize God if you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Then the next word is atatam. Atatam means spread out, vast. vast and easily available. Just as we do not need to search for space and air because they surround us, so the words of God are easily accessible. Those who are spiritual aspirants feel divine inebriation from the gospel, but it comes gradually and slowly as the gospel reveals its truths according to the aspirant's spiritual development and understanding. That is true. We may read it 1,000 times, yet it remains an endless source of inspiration. There is no end to spiritual experience, and the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is a unique chronicle of the highest immeasurable realizations. Once a disciple of the Holy Mother said that he had read the Gospel, Kathamrita, 50 times, and still he was finding new light in it. The message of God is endless. An American student read the Gospel and remarked, "There is one defect in this book. It has an end." That's the only defect, that it comes to an end. Then the final words are Bhuvi Grinanti Ye Bhurida Janaha. Those who are in this world, those who are spiritual seekers, who have done spiritual practices in previous lives, and also in this life, they get bliss, which is the flavor of spirituality. The exact translation, as I said, blessed are those who speak of you, and their limitless is their gain in this life. So you may perform charity in various forms, but the best charity is to distribute the word of God to humanity. So one thing is, when we say doing good to humanity, and so in our order, for example, we have all these activities, schools and colleges and relief activities, hospitals, and all that is good. Giving medicine to the sick, food to the hungry, and knowledge to the ignorant. And Swami Vivekananda clearly said that. But even Swamiji also mentioned that the highest form of gift, the best thing you can give is spirituality. That's why, so someone like the Buddha, and when they talk about compassion for all humanity, but you will notice the compassion in the Buddhist order takes the form of teaching Buddhism. And that's correct. That's actually the highest form of compassion one can manifest. That is, this is a real solution to suffering in the world, spirituality. Everything else is temporary. Despite the cancer in his throat, Ramakrishna taught whoever came to him. He never turned anyone away. He said, "Let me be condemned to be born again, born over and over again, even in the form of a dog, if by doing so I can be of help to a single soul. I will give up 20,000 such bodies to help one man." And we see in the Buddha's lifetime also, the very last thing he did was he taught. He was sick and ill, but he wouldn't turn away people who came to him for advice. And so that's the invocation. Prabir Babu, did you want to say something?
I have a question. I mean, when I read the gospel, I find that it's full of things for the householders. I mean, he used to, Thakur used to normally, his devotees were householders. And I understand that he gave instructions to the monk disciples too, who became later on. As a monk, when you read the gospel, what do you find? I don't find any instructions saying you go to the mountain and you spend alone. So what as a monk, what do you see? I see full of things that I can adopt in my life as a householder.
Yes. So M recorded the instructions which he heard, and because he had a job, he could go there only on holidays, which is the weekend. So Saturdays and Sundays, you would find a lot of people from Calcutta would come and gather around Sri Ramakrishna. That's why the small group of young boys who later became monks, Sri Ramakrishna would tell them, come on weekdays, not on weekends. So come on weekdays, where he would take them aside and give them instructions, the same instructions, but in a much more intense form, especially instructions about renunciation of the world. So when the householder devotees would ask about renunciation of the world, he would say, what is the need? It's staying in samsara and doing spiritual practice is like fighting against the enemy from inside a fort. You have the safety and securities. Things are taken care of. Whereas to those who could renounce, like those young boys, he fired them up with the zeal for renunciation and for one-pointed pursuit of God realization, because he knew they would be the emissaries, the messengers of his teaching. They would teach the world. He would give the example of that it is enough to have a nail if you want to commit suicide, and don't. But if you want to commit suicide, one nail is enough to kill oneself. But to kill the enemy, you need a sword and a shield. So the sword and the shield, the life of renunciation and learning and extraordinary austerities, very deep spirituality. Do you need all of that to become enlightened and get moksha? Not necessarily. The householder devotees also got moksha. Those who became desireless, who wanted nothing but God, and there were a number of them, they all got moksha. So the final liberation can be had by everybody. But a few are selected to teach. So their lives have to be a kind of a specialized life, like monastic life. Yeah.
But what do you, when you read the gospel, as a monk, what do you find for yourself? For example, I'm just asking a question.
The same thing. But the whole goal is, as a householder, one might look for those places where there's an answer to how do you balance spirituality with the demands of the samsara. So those places are it does not is not directly relevant to a monk, but the places where he talks about spiritual practice, about intensity, about renunciation, those are common for everybody. See, the teachings in the gospel are interesting because of that physical renunciation is not talked about there. I mean, not specially emphasized. But mental renunciation is for everybody. Without that, spirituality is not possible. The two do not go together. That's why there's a clear division in the Vedic Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. Shankaracharya, when he introduces the Bhagavad Gita, he says religion itself, Vedic religion, he says, but Dvivido hi Vedokta Dharma, Pravritti Lakshana, Nivritti Lakshana. Vedic religion, or in general, all religion, is of two kinds broadly. One is the mass religion, where we are taught that how do you live well in this life, ethical life, moral life, with the psychological support of God, blessings from God, to face the struggles of life, lead a proper family life, personal family life, community life, national life. So that is the conventional religion, very, very important. That is what has given civilization, our modern civilization. Every great civilization has developed from a religion. They've got these values and ethics, the foundation. But there is a higher kind of religion, that if one ultimately seeking meaning and purpose in life, what is the point of it all? I really want to know the secret of life. I really want to know this. They say that God can be experienced, that you can have freedom from suffering, all those things which the Buddha went out looking for. If that is your quest, and one day it will all be a quest for all, for everybody. One day one has to come to that kind of religion, that is this higher spirituality. Then we want moksha. So the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is a moksha shastra. Is actually, so everybody, whether you are a monk or a householder, if you like the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, if they pull you, and if you want that to be your ideal, then you are seeking moksha, because this is what Sri Ramakrishna is giving. Sri Ramakrishna gives moksha. I remember the story of a very senior devotee who lived in Singapore. A monk told me that this gentleman, he had taken initiation again from Swami Madhavanandaji long ago. And then he took initiation from another well-known God man. So this monk asked that gentleman, why did you take initiation once again? You had already taken initiation in the Ramakrishna order from Swami, no less than Swami Madhavanji. And that man was so discerning. He said, oh, that is for God realization. And what is this for? Then why did you take it again, initiation? Oh, this is for money. I believe that if I repeat this mantra, God will be gracious and make me rich in this life. And so he has like kept both sides nicely. He has balanced it out. But anybody who likes the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, you're a moksharthi, mumukshu, a seeker of enlightenment and freedom. So we are all like that. I was just reading conversations with Swami Bhuteshanandaji. So somebody asked him, a monk, so there are only monks there. So a monk asked him, what do you mean by the Ramakrishna Sangha, the Ramakrishna order? There is one organization called Ramakrishna Mission, Ramakrishna Math, and the Vedanta Society. That's all right. But what is the wider order of Ramakrishna? And then Swami Bhuteshanji says that anybody who loves and follows Sri Ramakrishna, who makes Sri Ramakrishna his or her ideal, is part of this wider Ramakrishna Sangha. So in that sense, all of us are part of that Ramakrishna Sangha. It's not just one particular monastic organization. But for all of us, this renunciation is not only compulsory, it will happen. It is already happening for everybody, and it will continue to happen. As we move Godward, we leave worldliness behind. Girish says, I find it curious that the path to non-dual realization is through the dualist practice of the idea that God is an object to see or realize. Yes, it may sound strange. That Swami Turiyanandaji, such a great Vedantist, he says in one place to a younger monk, he says, Swami Vivekananda could say, I am that, I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. But it does not come easily to us, so we say thou. So this is Swami Turiyanandaji who is saying this. He says, Swamiji bolte parten, ami সেই, আমাদের আসে না সহজে, তাই আমরা বলি তুমি, you, thou. I think he was just saying it for the instruction of the other monk. He was himself such a great non-dualist. How is this possible? It's possible just because, whether in a dualist way or a non-dualist way, we are realizing the same entity. What does the dualist do? The dualist takes that, instead of investigating one's own experience, this jiva, this sentient being, just takes it for granted, I am what I appear to be. To become a non-dualist, you must start by questioning that. Am I this body? Am I this mind? Then you discover something beyond body and mind, which is a non-dual reality, apart from which nothing else exists. So you discover the divinity within yourself, and from there, the oneness of all existence. That is non-dual realization, Advaita. But the dualist, instead of doing that, the dualist says, I believe God exists. That ultimate reality exists. And now I'm relating myself to it as a devotee, as a servant, or as a child, or whatever it is. So I'm directing my emotion, my love towards God. Can you do that? Of course you can. And you're still talking about the same reality. I was talking to students of USC, University of Southern California, last night. So one of them is a follower of ISKCON, the Hare Krishna movement. This young girl, she's an undergrad student there. And she was saying that I like non-dual teachings, but I am a devotee of Krishna and I repeat the Mahamantra, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, and that thing. So can I do it? And I said, of course you can. One of the main teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, he would say, bhav nashto korte nahi. Don't destroy the bhav of somebody, a spiritual attitude which has built up. If it comes naturally to that person, it means there is some kind of background to it in earlier lives. So that should not be disturbed. Once a Pandit, in the gathering of devotees around Sri Ramakrishna, a Pandit was sitting there. So one simple devotee was talking about love of God, and the Pandit questioned him in very sharp, dialectical ways, attacking the very concept of God this way and that way. Sri Ramakrishna watched aghast, and then he went to the Pandit and he said, with the punya, the merits of so many lives, one gets a little belief in God, a little faith in God in this life. You call yourself a Pandit, you are destroying the faith in God of this man? And the Pandit was so humiliated, he got up and quietly he slunk away from there. So one should not destroy the faith of other people. So is it just out of consideration you are not telling that other person that we should give up your dualistic practice and come to non-dualism? No, 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 not at all. Sri Ramakrishna is very clear. Whichever way you take it, it will work. He says the sweet, you eat it like this, you eat it like that, you'll eat it like that, it will still taste sweet. Because you are coming in contact with that reality. Yeah. Then why the special importance of non-dualism? That's because I like it. And also, Swami Vivekananda pointed out, there are many, many reasons why it is much more suitable to this day and age. And I've seen in many cases, people who have devotion to God, they started off as not being interested or not unable to worship God, unable to have any kind of pull towards God. But through Advaita, they gain faith. And then they can allow themselves to have devotion to God. Many cases I've seen. They become genuine devotees. All right. So once again, we are on this journey. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, translated by Swami Nikhilananda ji. And a very nice introduction by Aldous Huxley, actually. Once again, not preface, foreword. Let me read the foreword because it's a pretty famous foreword by Aldous Huxley. Foreword by Aldous Huxley. In the history of the arts, genius is a thing of very rare occurrence. So he was writing this in 1942. Rarer still, however, are the competent reporters and recorders of that genius. The world has had many hundreds of admirable poets and philosophers. But of these hundreds, only a few have had the fortune to attract a Boswell or an Eckermann. When we leave the field of art for that of spiritual religion, the scarcity of competent reporters becomes even more strongly marked. Of the day-to-day life of the great theocentric saints and contemplatives we know, in the great majority of cases, nothing whatsoever. Many, it is true, have recorded their doctrines in writing, and a few, such as Saint Augustine, Suso, Saint Teresa, have left us autobiographies of the greatest value. But all doctrinal writing is in some measure formal and impersonal, while the autobiographer tends to omit what he regards as trifling matters and suffers from the further disadvantage of being unable to say how he strikes other people and in what way he affects their lives. Moreover, most saints have left neither writings nor self-portraits, and for a knowledge of their lives, their characters, and the teachings, we are forced to rely upon the records made by the disciples, who in most cases have proved themselves singularly incompetent as reporters and biographers. Hence, the special interest attaching to this enormously detailed account of the daily life and conversations of Sri Ramakrishna. M, as the author modestly styles himself, was peculiarly qualified for his task. To a reverent love for his master, to a deep and experiential knowledge of that master's teaching, he added a prodigious memory for the small happenings of each day and a happy gift for recording them in an interesting and realistic way. Making good use of his natural gifts and of the circumstances in which he found himself, M produced a book unique so far as my knowledge goes in the literature of hagiography. No other saint has had so able and indefatigable a Boswell. So Boswell, we know he wrote the life of Johnson. Never have the small events of a contemplative's daily life been described with such a wealth of intimate detail. Never have the casual and unstudied utterances of a great religious teacher been set down with so minute a fidelity. To Western readers, it is true, this fidelity and this wealth of detail are sometimes a trifle disconcerting, for the social, religious, and intellectual frames of reference within which Sri Ramakrishna did his thinking and expressed his feelings were entirely Indian. But after the first few surprises and bewilderments, we begin to find something peculiarly stimulating and instructive about the very strangeness, and to our eyes, the eccentricity of the man revealed to us in M's narrative. What a scholastic philosopher would call the accidents of Sri Ramakrishna's life were intensely Hindu and therefore as we in the West are as far as we in the West are concerned, unfamiliar and hard to understand. Its essence, however, was intensely mystical and therefore universal. To read through these conversations in which mystical doctrine alternates with an unfamiliar kind of humor, and where discussions of the oddest aspects of Hindu mythology give place to the most profound and subtle utterances about the nature of ultimate reality, is in itself a liberal education in humility, tolerance, and suspense of judgment. We must be grateful to the translator for his excellent version of a book, so curious and delightful as a biographical document, so precious at the same time for what it teaches us of the life of the spirit. Aldous Huxley. Okay, let's make a little beginning at least. First chapter, chapter 1. I'm on page 77. This is February 1882 when M first comes to Sri Ramakrishna. Chapter 1, Master and Disciple, February 1882. It was on a Sunday in spring, a few days after Sri Ramakrishna's birthday, that M met him for the first time. Sri Ramakrishna lived at Kalibari, the temple garden of Mother Kali, on the bank of the Ganges at Dakshineshwar. M, being at leisure on Sundays, had gone with his friend Sidhu to visit several gardens at Baranagar. As they were walking in Prasanna Banerjee's garden, Sidhu said, "There is a charming place on the bank of the Ganges where a Paramahamsa lives. Should you like to go there?" M assented, and they started immediately for the Dakshineshwar temple garden. They arrived at the main gate at dusk and went straight to Sri Ramakrishna's room. And there they found him seated on a wooden couch facing the east. With a smile on his face, he was talking of God. The room was full of people, all seated on the floor, drinking in his words in deep silence. M stood there speechless and looked on. It was as if he were standing where all the holy places met, and as if Shukadeva himself were speaking the word of God, or as if Sri Chaitanya were singing the name and glories of the Lord in Puri with Ramananda Swarup and other devotees. Sri Ramakrishna said, "When, hearing the name of Hari or Rama once, you shed tears and your hair stands on end, then you may know for certain that you do not have to perform such devotions as the Sandhya anymore. Then only will you have the right to renounce rituals, or rather rituals will drop away of themselves. Then it will be enough if you repeat only the name of Rama or Hari, or even simply Om." Continuing, he said, "The Sandhya merges in the Gayatri, and the Gayatri merges in Om." M looked around him with wonder and said to himself, "What a beautiful place! What a charming man! How beautiful his words are! I have no wish to move from this spot." After a few minutes, he thought, "Let me see the place first. Then I'll come back here and sit down." As he left the room with Sidhu, he heard the sweet music of the evening service arising in the temple from gong, bell, drum, and cymbal. He could hear music from the Nahabat too at the south end of the garden. The sounds traveled over the Ganges, floating away and losing themselves in the distance. A soft spring wind was blowing, laden with the fragrance of flowers. The moon had just appeared. It was as if nature and man together were preparing for the evening worship. M and Sidhu visited the 12 Shiva temples, the Radhakanta temple, and the temple of Bhavatarini. And as M watched the services before the images, his heart was filled with joy. On the way back to Sri Ramakrishna's room, the two friends talked. Sidhu told M that the temple garden had been founded by Rani Rashmani. He said that God was worshipped there daily as Kali, Krishna, and Shiva, and that within the gates many sadhus and beggars were fed. When they reached Sri Ramakrishna's door again, they found it shut and Brinde, the maid, standing outside. M, who had been trained in English manners and would not enter a room without permission, asked her, Is the holy man in? Brinde replied, yes, he is in the room. M. How long has he lived here? Brinde. Oh, he has been here a long time. M. Does he read many books? Brinde. Books? Oh dear, no. They are all on his tongue. M had just finished his studies in college. It amazed him to hear that Sri Ramakrishna read no books. M. Perhaps it is the time for his evening worship. May we go into the room? Will you tell him we are anxious to see him? Brinde. Go right in, children. Go in and sit down. Entering the room, they found Sri Ramakrishna alone, seated on the wooden couch. Incense had just been burned and all the doors were shut. As he entered, M, with folded hands, saluted the master. Then, at the master's bidding, he and Sidhu sat on the floor. Sri Ramakrishna asked them, where do you live? What is your occupation? Why have you come to Baranagar? M answered the questions, but he noticed that now and then the master seemed to become absent-minded. Later he learned that this mood is called bhava, or ecstasy. It is like the state of the angler who has been sitting with his rod. The fish comes and swallows the bait, and the float begins to tremble. The angler is on the alert. He grips the rod and watches the float steadily and eagerly. He will not speak to anyone. Such was the state of Sri Ramakrishna's mind. Later, M heard and himself noticed that Sri Ramakrishna would often go into this mood after dusk, sometimes becoming totally unconscious of the outer world. M. Perhaps you want to perform your evening worship. In that case, may we take our leave? Sri Ramakrishna, still in ecstasy. No, evening worship? No, it is not exactly that. After a little conversation, M saluted the master and took his leave. Come again, Sri Ramakrishna said. On his way home, M began to wonder. Who is this serene-looking man who is drawing me back to him? Is it possible for a man to be great without being a scholar? How wonderful it is. I should like to see him again. He himself said, come again. I shall go tomorrow or day after. M's second visit to Sri Ramakrishna took place on the southeast veranda at 8 o'clock in the morning. The master was about to be shaved. The barber had just arrived. And this is an interesting thing. We don't have a picture of him shaved without the beard. And I know that a very famous artist long ago in India, he sort of imagined what Sri Ramakrishna would look like without the beard, and he drew a painting of that. And people have drawn paintings. You know, that thing which Swami Chaitananda mentioned, that poets have spoken about the Lord in many different ways, painters too. And one of the strangest ones I met was, he was a gangster and he was in jail. So I had been invited to give a talk in jail of all places. So I went and gave the talk, and this man came up and he showed me his portfolio of paintings. And he always would paint gods and goddesses. And he said, I will come and meet you. When they release me, I'll come and meet you. I said, all right. About a year later, he did actually turn up. And then he came and sat with me. I gave him a cup of tea in the place where I was I was in a college at that time. I think I'd already become a sannyasi, a monk. So on his way out, other people who worked in the college, they later came to me and they said, Swami, you have the strangest of contacts. Do you know who he is? He's a noted mafia don in this area. And that man, he said, I will paint Sri Ramakrishna and I'll give it to you. And he did. Years later, he one day turned up. And he had this little painting he had made. It was Shiva. And Shiva is smoking the ganja, you know, the hemp. And the fire of the hemp is flaring. And Shiva is sitting in an icy cave. And Shiva has a beard. But if you look closely, it is Sri Ramakrishna. And you can see his face in the flare of that flame of of the pipe. And he's sitting in a meditation posture. And his eyes are completely, they are like this, fixed on seeing something inwardly, which you cannot see outwardly. It was a wonderful picture. And I kept it in my room for more, I think maybe 10 years or nearly such time, less than that. So it still hangs there, I think, in Belur Math. So there's a very interesting background to it. So he says, he was about to be shaved. The barber had just arrived. As the cold season still lingered, he had put on a moleskin shawl bordered with red. Seeing M, the master said, "So you have come. That's good. Sit down here." He was smiling. He stammered a little when he spoke. Sri Ramakrishna to M, "Where do you live?" M, "In Calcutta, sir." Sri Ramakrishna, "Where are you staying here?" So this place is north of Calcutta. M, "I am at Baranagar at my older sister's, Ishan Kaviraj's house." Sri Ramakrishna, "Oh, at Ishan's. Well, how is Keshav now? He was very ill." M, "Indeed, I have heard so too, but I believe he is well now." Sri Ramakrishna, "I made a vow to worship the mother with green coconut and sugar on Keshav's recovery. Sometimes in the early hours in the morning, I would wake up and cry before her, 'Mother, please make Keshav well again. If Keshav doesn't live, whom shall I talk with when I go to Calcutta?'" So that's the agenda. You want somebody who will understand what he says. And so it was that I resolved to offer her the green coconut and sugar. "Tell me, do you know of a certain Mr. Cook who has come to Calcutta? Is it true that he is giving lectures? Once Keshav took me on a steamer, and this Mr. Cook too was in the party." M, "Yes, sir. I have heard something like that, but I've never been to his lectures. I don't know much about him." Sri Ramakrishna, "Pratap's brother came here. He stayed a few days. He had nothing to do and he said he wanted to live here. I came to know that he has left his wife and children with his father-in-law. He has a whole brood of them. So I took him to task. Just fancy, he's the father of so many children. Will people from the neighborhood feed them and bring them up? He isn't even ashamed that someone else is feeding his wife and children and that they have been left at his father-in-law's house. I scolded him very hard and asked him to look for a job. Then he was willing to leave here. Are you married? M, yes, sir. Sri Ramakrishna with a shudder. Oh, Ramlal, alas, he is married. So the footnote, Ramlal is a nephew of Sri Ramakrishna and he was a priest at the Kali temple. Oh, Ramlal, alas, he is married. Like one guilty of a terrible offense, M sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the ground. He thought, is it such a wicked thing to get married? And the master continued, have you any children? M this time could hear the beating of his own heart. He whispered in a trembling voice, yes, sir, I have children. Very sadly, Sri Ramakrishna said, ah, me, he even has children. Thus rebuked, M sat speechless. His pride had received a blow. After a few minutes, Sri Ramakrishna looked at him kindly and said affectionately, you see, you have certain good signs. I know them by looking at a person's forehead, his eyes, and so on. Tell me now, what kind of a person is your wife? Has she spiritual attitudes, or is she under the power of avidya? M, she's all right, but I'm afraid she is ignorant. Master, with evident displeasure, and you are a man of knowledge. M had yet to learn the distinction between knowledge and ignorance. Up to this time, his conception had been that one got knowledge from books and schools. Later on, he gave up this false conception. He was taught that to know God is knowledge and not to know him, ignorance. When Sri Ramakrishna exclaimed, and you are a man of knowledge, M's ego was again badly shocked. Master, well, do you believe? I think we'll stop here because a very interesting portion talking about God and philosophy starting now. We'll take it up next time. If you have any comments or questions or remarks, what are the symptoms of an impure mind? If you want to know in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna talks about it in great detail. That he says that I have talked about the divine qualities. Now, asuram meshram. Now, hear from me the qualities of an impure mind, and he goes into great detail about it. In the Daivasura Samvada, the Daivasura Vibhaga Yoga. This is the Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. You can find that Sattva Rajas Tamas, chapter 14. Then chapter 16, this is called Daivasura Sampad Vibhaga Yoga. So he talks about the qualities of a pure mind, of a spiritual mind. And then he assures Krishna in the 16th chapter, he assures Arjuna that don't worry. Arjuna must be in tension, like M, can I be spiritual or am I not going to be spiritual? And Krishna assures him, don't worry, you are born to a divine heritage. You have got a spiritual mind. And then he goes on to give a detailed description of impurity. And I remember when we studied this, the Swami who was in charge of our ashram at that time, the abbot of the monastery, he told us, he warned us before we studied this. He said, this is not for finding out faults of others. This is for applying to yourself. So I'm detecting demonic qualities in you. No, don't do that. It is for oneself. You're a spiritual seeker. The point is that if I'm not making progress in spiritual life, if I have some of these qualities, nothing to feel bad about. It's just that we have to work that much harder. We have to transform these qualities into sattvic qualities. So there, in the 6th verse, in the 16th chapter, 6th verse, Krishna says, Daivo vistarasha prokta asuram parthameshinu. O Arjuna, I have told you in detail about the divine qualities. That means the spiritual qualities, which make you a good spiritual seeker. But now listen to the opposite, the qualities, the characteristics of an impure mind. So what you are asking here, a detailed description is given. For example, pravrittim cha nivrittim cha janana vidurasura na shaucham na pichacharo na satyam teshu vidyate. They do not know the difference between what should be done and what should not be done. That this idea of fools rush in where angels fear to tread. They, out of bravado, there are people who do things which they should not do. Things which should be done in life, they ignore entirely. Then purity, they have no sense of purity, physical, verbal, mental. Then good behavior, achara. Truth, they don't have a grasp on the truth. And so on. There's a long description. Endless desire, pride and ego and arrogance, and then endless thoughts, chintam aparimeya, endless thoughts, many kinds of thoughts about many things, worried about 100 different things in the world. So isn't that normal? No, it is not actually. You will see advanced spiritual seekers. I've seen monks and householders who are advanced spiritual seekers. The minds are very focused and light. They don't think about many different things in the world. They just don't think about it. Asha pasha shatir baddha kama krodha parayana. Bound by 100 ropes or 100 coils of expectations and desires. No wonder they suffer so much. One psychologist, who was that, very famous in New York. Nobody reads him nowadays. He was very famous here in 1960s and all. Dr. Albert Ellis. So he says, whenever his patients would come to him, the first thing he would tell them is that the road to hell is paved with unrealistic expectations. So, idam adya maya labdham imam prapsya manoratham. Today, I have attained these things. I have bought these gadgets. I have met these people. I have taken these selfies. And then the following things will be achieved by me tomorrow or day after. So this kind of project of life, many people do that, especially nowadays when there is freedom and money, one thing after the other. Idamasti idamapi me bhavishyati punardhanam. This much wealth I have accumulated, this much property, and this much more is to be accumulated by me. So, no, that sounds like me. Yes, Krishna is saying these are demons, demonic tendencies. Aso maya hata shatrun hanishya cha paranapi. This enemy, this person is my enemy and has been defeated. And there are certain other people who are awful, they're enemies of mine. I'll defeat them too. So this sounds pretty normal. No, not normal. These are demons. These are demons in human form. Krishna talks about that. Again, for analyzing oneself. One monk was joking, I remember long back. Oh, I was reading the Bhagavad Gita. There is a full description about me. I said, really? He said, yes, you go to the demonic qualities chapter. Sri Krishna has described me in such great detail. Another monk, monks are very funny sometimes. Another monk, he had very big ears, and he had the uncanny ability to move some people can do that, to move his ears. And he said, do you know who can do that? There's certain animals a buffalo can do that, it seems. And he says, I'm quite sure that I was a buffalo in my past life. I jumped straight from being an animal to being a monk. So we'll skip the in-between stages of being a normal human being. So you will find some animalistic tendencies in me. What is the difference between samadhi and ecstasy? So samadhi would usually mean loss of external awareness. The world drops out of your awareness. You're fully aware internally. Ecstasy, one may retain some external awareness. So they said about Sri Chaitanya's ecstasies. Sometimes he would be completely lost to the external world, absolutely standing still like a statue, maybe tears pouring down his face. And sometimes he would be in between. His speech would not be clear. There would be tears in his eyes, and he would move but like a drunkard. All these things were very clearly seen in Sri Ramakrishna. And sometimes he would be quite aware of the world around him, still in ecstasy. He would sing and dance. And so Sri Ramakrishna also in his life, you see these three stages. Kiran is asking, did M talk about his own spiritual experiences anywhere? Not here, of course, but he was very shy. But there are books about M. Later on in his life, many people gathered around him, and many of the monks of the Ramakrishna order at that time, they were young students who came to M, and he encouraged them to become monks. One of the senior monks told M, many years after Sri Ramakrishna's passing, that I've calculated the number of the youngsters who have come here after meeting the direct monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna at this much. And the majority of them, they've all come here after meeting you. So one interesting thing is there's this very famous book, Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahamsa Yogananda. So at that time, Paramahamsa Yogananda also was a young student there and very interested in spiritual life. And he used to visit M. And he mentions in that book, Autobiography of a Yogi, he says that the Christ-like master, M, who was a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. And he has given a picture of M. And he was quite sure that M was enlightened, and if by M's grace, he could get a vision of the Divine Mother. And he prayed to M. M did not say anything, of course. He was too shy to directly bless anybody. But then this young man got an amazing vision of the Divine Mother. And then the next day he came back, but he did not report it to M. And then M looked at him and smiled and said, oh, the young sir is mischievous. You're hiding it. He could see through all of that. I remember Oh, Search in Secret India, Paul Brunton. There's a chapter on his meeting with him. I didn't know that. I have to take a look at that. I don't remember that. Paul Brunton also met Ramana Maharshi, isn't it? Yes. Many people came to Calcutta and met M. This monk I knew, a very senior monk, disciple of Swami Shivananda, Swami Pavananandaji, who was there in the ashram when I joined the order. He was nearly 90 years old at that time. He was an Irishman, and he had read Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga. By the way, again, I'm sure it must have been a New York edition published here. He had read it while he was a radio operator in Burma. And then he decided to become a disciple of Swami Vivekananda. So he came to India. And it's all part of the same undivided British India up to Burma. So he came to Calcutta, and he found out that Swami Vivekananda had passed away long ago. But his brother disciple was there that was in 1920s, early 20s, was there in Darjeeling, Swami Abhedananda. So he went and stayed with Swami Abhedananda in Darjeeling and studied with him. And he had a very sweet sense of humor. So this very senior old monk, and I was an absolute newcomer. He would pull my leg very gently. It would take me years afterwards. I found out he was pulling my leg. He said, "So do you know Sanskrit?" I said, "Yes, Swami, whatever little we learned in school." "Well, maybe you could teach me a little bit." "I don't know, I could try." And only later I found out he had studied the Upanishads with Swami Abhedananda. And he was part of the well-known Mysore study circle with Swami Nikhilananda and others, and all the great Swamis, Swami Bhuteshanandi and others. And he was part of that study circle. So why did I bring that up? Oh, so when he came to, so when he finally found out about initiation and mantra, he asked Swami Abhedananda, "So would you please initiate me? I want you to be my guru." And Swami Abhedananda said, "I am not your guru. Your guru is in a place called Belur Math in Calcutta." So he again went to Calcutta, and he met, whom would he meet but M? He met M. So M brought this young Irishman to Belur Math, where he met Swami Shivananda. And Swami Shivananda initiated him, gave him the name Shambhu, which is one of the names of Shiva. So 50 years of students in Deoghar Vidyapith, they know everybody knows Shambhu Maharaj in those generations, multiple generations. When he was a young monk in Brahmachari in Belur Math, he was told by Swami Shivananda, "Have you seen Deoghar? We have a new ashram there. I think it'll be good if you go and stay there." Just to see the little instructions. So Swami Shivananda told him, "Go and stay in Deoghar." So he stayed in Deoghar till the end of his life. I mean, he passed away in Calcutta. They brought him after he had a little accident, but the rest of his life, he stayed 50, 60, more than 60 years in one place. And he taught grandfathers, fathers, and sons. He introduced hockey there. He taught them English and history. He loved cultivating roses. So many people remember him because of that. In Belur Math, he got this bouquet of roses, and he presented it to Swami Shivananda after his initiation. And Swami Shivananda blessed him that, "May your life be as beautiful as these roses." They were rose buds. And it was a very serene, very saintly, very quiet life, and wonderful life. We got a little fragrance of that. And he cultivated roses in Deoghar also. And the gardener there said, it was strange that he never said this to anytime he went out visiting other centers. The last time he left Deoghar, he had a minor head injury, and they thought we should go to a big hospital for a checkup. So he was going to Calcutta. He called the gardener and he said, "Take care of the roses." So he knew that he wouldn't come back. I still remember his message to me, last time I met him. I was a brahmachari. I remember bowing down to him. He lived in a little cottage surrounded by beautiful trees. And he waved his hand around and saying, "Listen, my name is Vishwarup." So he said, "Listen, Vishwarup, all this will pass away. The Atman alone abides. All this will pass away. The Atman alone abides." And then both hands, blessings. So, yeah, but he came through M. He came through M. Is the initiation in Ramakrishna order the same as Shaktipat? Not in that sense, not in the sense of the Siddha Yoga. In Ramakrishna order, the initiation is from a guru to a disciple with a mantra and instructions for repetition of the mantra and meditation. All right, so we will close here. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.